Hello and welcome back to Squawk 77. I'm Bill Daly, private pilot and your host. If you're anything like me, you can't get enough of old planes. The older the better. Then you're gonna love today's episode. Today we're talking with Keith Kossuth, who shares a special bond with the Magic One, a 1929 TravelAir biplane. Keith's dedication to this aircraft is a decades-long love affair. And together, he and the Magic One continue to inspire pilots across the country. I did some digging around, and I found that the 1929 TravelAir was one of the first planes designed to meet federal aviation standards introduced after the Great War. It resembles the famous Fokker D7, with its beautiful round engine and classic biplane design. The pilot sits in the rear cockpit, while two passengers can fit up in the front. And I can tell you from first-hand experience, there's plenty of room up there. This is a slow-flying, graceful beauty from a romantic era of aviation. Truly a remarkable sight in the sky. So buckle up as we dive into today's Squawk 77 episode with Keith Kossuth and the legendary Magic One. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Squawk 77. Bill Daly here, and today I'm at Chino Airport, great old facility, and I'm joined by Keith Kossuth, and he is the owner, operator, curator, proprietor of Barnstormers biplane rides here in Chino. I had an opportunity to take a ride with him about 3 years ago over at El Monte. So Keith, what led you to become a pilot?
Well, I got a surprise birthday gift to go for a flight 2003 in a 1929 TravelAir, so that was it.
Just over 20 years.
Yeah.
Just over 20 years ago. Wow. It sounds to me like you might be a pilot they would classify in the olden days as a good rudder stick man. You have a good sense of the plane. You can feel it in your pants when you're flying it and what it's doing. That sort of thing.
A plane like this, I mean, you know your air speeds and what works, but it's a lot of hearing and just hearing the wind on the flying wires, and your sight picture is everything.
Well, how did you get your hands on the TravelAir? How did you come, you two become acquainted?
Well, since the day that I got my first flight in that TravelAir, I thought, wow.
Let me back up just a second. Your first flight you got for your birthday was in the TravelAir? This
yes.
Not
Not this one,
okay,
but one
like it.
Set up very much similar.
Okay.
Same configuration, same engine. I didn't have anyone in my family or any of my friends that had anything to do with airplanes, so it kind of was, I thought it was something that was going to be hard to do, but it's not. The thing is, the hardest part to do is just finding a place to start, and all you have to do is go to your local airport and go, hey, I want to take lessons. It's that easy. You start right then. So kind of, I don't think everybody makes it seem like it's something special or something hard, but I feel like there are a lot of people that present it that way, and to me that's wrong. It has to be, let everyone know how easy it is. I mean, everyone could do this. And I got lucky. I thought about it for years. I didn't just take that flight and go get my pilot's license because I didn't know anyone. And finally it was just basically years of pretending, like a picture of me standing next to that TravelAir. Oh yeah, that's mine. And someone finally was looking at the picture, and I said that because multiple people looked at the picture and they said, wow, your plane's cool. And I just went, yep. And one day someone actually, they caught me in my story because they knew the plane, and it was funny. And the second that happened, I felt so terrible, but it was also the best day ever because that guy told me right then, he says, well, why are you making up this story? It's easy to get your pilot's license. Just go out to Chino. That's the closest airport to your house. And I did. A half an hour later, I was at the restaurant here. I asked the lady Pam that used to run it, and she said, oh, can't you read the sign? It's right there. Learn to fly. Okay, I walked in the gate exactly where I'm based right now to the corner of the building, walked in, just had to give them some information. My first flight was the next day, 6 months later, I had my private pilot certificate. So
Wow.
you just focus and do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that kind of explains, what made the TravelAir right from you. You basically, you've had a love affair with it.
Yeah, and I thought, how cool is it that plane is what pushed me to go get my pilot certificate? Well, that's exactly what I do now. I get to give people that feeling. And
So what's it like flying an open cockpit airplane? I mean, when I first got in, I kind of felt like I was flying a motorcycle.
that's it.
Really?
Yeah, that's exactly what this all started. I've loved motorcycles my whole life. I got my first motorcycle when I was three and a half. So being in a plane like this and it feeling like you're riding an old motorcycle times 100 is what makes me do this, and all the other pieces that come along with it and the people getting the experience. So
Well, having an open cockpit, I mean, obviously most planes don't have that nowadays. What are some of the drawbacks and things you've got to sort of like, I can't do this because I have an open cockpit, or that sort of thing?
I don't have any drawbacks.
Nothing at all, really?
Because this is what I fly, so that's what it is. And,
You just
mean,
deal with it. Well, let's say inclement weather, you just don't go up, obviously, right?
Well, if it's cold, you wear 2 or 3 jackets.
Mm-hmm.
If it's hot, it just feels okay. You're acclimated to it's hot on the ground. You get in the plane, you got some breeze. It feels better than being on the ground. There's multiple planes that are in closed cockpit that they don't feel good flying when it's hot.
Oh,
this feels
no kidding.
Feels all right. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's not a good day when it's pushing 95 and you got little tiny windows on the side there, and
so it's a lot better feeling. It's more open. You don't get any feelings of claustrophobia. I mean, some people don't like to be in a little Cessna, which is, I mean, they're fun to fly, but it just gives them a different feeling. So being in an open cockpit is just freer and makes you feel good.
Are there any particular flight characteristics to the TravelAir? Such as I noticed on like your forward visibility is kind of limited, especially on takeoff because you're a tail dragger.
Well, to me that's normal. This might have I fly other tailwheel planes, and this does have the visibility issue. But the thing is, getting the tail up off the ground quick, you have your sight picture. You're looking just like you're flying.
Yeah, I noticed when you were taxiing, you were doing a serpentine pattern,
Yep,
so you can
S-turn,
you
turn to the left, look out the right. Turn to the right, look out the left. And you have to do that. You always get your forward. You're looking to the future. Each time you turn, you're looking out far enough to know by the time you get the tail over the other way, you have the other basically 90 degree, 180 degree view out the other side that you're focusing on. But it's always knowing exactly where the nose is. The second it crosses back over the line, you have that visual, and you can't stop doing that. If you do, you're in trouble. So
what are some of your common no-go rules? Something that will keep you out of enjoying the flight.
I have different limits. The wind is not usually one of them. I love it windy. This plane is amazing flying in the wind. Visibility is everything. If the ceiling is too low or just your forward visibility is not. The worst is your basic horizontal visibility. Just flying in smoke and areas that have lots of fires, and that's just something that happens throughout the summer. And flying the country, you'll have multiple areas that have so many wildfires. I travel Oregon, Washington, the San Juan Islands every August, and I've done that trip and decided while I'm at the San Juan Islands that I'm going to go to Illinois, and you figure out the weather as you're going and plot it out. It changes so quick. But
we'll get back to Keith and the Magic One right after this special message.
Welcome to Navigating Campus Life with Albert Lopez, your ultimate guide to thriving in college. Join us as we dive into everything from professional and personal development.
I was very grateful Mount SAC offered a lead workshop that connected me to resources on campus, such as the Career Center. And because of that, I was able to make an appointment, see a counselor, and I landed my dream internship at a radio station in LA.
To the latest social issues affecting students today.
So I, like many people around the world, have been very saddened by the appalling violations of human rights.
We'll tackle personal and academic challenges, explore campus involvement and events, and uncover essential resources and updates you can't afford to miss. Let's navigate this journey together. Whether you're a freshman or a senior, this podcast has something for everyone. Tune in to Navigating Campus Life with Albert Lopez, where your campus journey begins. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform.
All right, well, let's get back to Keith Kossuth and the magic one.
One other no-go is density altitude. Showing up somewhere, landing in Laramie, Wyoming, middle of the afternoon, you get in there, density altitude 9,900. You land and you take a break. If you're going to fuel up to get some distance, you're going to have trouble getting off the ground. And then you think, okay, well, I'll just wait till the next morning. And the next morning, it's 8,800 density altitude.
Oh, my God, you're stuck.
Yeah. Well,
To fly with half tanks or something? Or
no,
what?
full tank. I know the plane. You just have to really fly it like it's a J3 Cub. I mean, I've done rides in Deer Lodge, Montana, 7,000 elevation. And it's like, okay, yeah, you could do rides there all day long. Just the conditions are right. The runway's downhill, you land the other direction, and you just are careful. Well, this plane is definitely capable and to fly at night, but I found out it's best to not fly a plane like this at night unless you're in areas that you are very familiar with. Very limited instrumentation, and the lighting in the plane, there's no landing light, which I'm used to landing with no landing light, just position lights. But it's always smarter to not fly mountain passes in the dark, and mountain flying is just not something you should do. I don't think it's smart to do in any plane in the dark, but I mean, people do because they can. But I've realized if I don't know an area, it's not a smart thing to fly this plane at night in those areas, especially mountain areas. Anything that I have flown multiple times, I don't have an issue flying it in the dark. You know, all of the landmarks, all of the obstructions, but it's still smarter not to.
Absolutely. That's wise. That's very wise. What kind of jobs do you take on now with your biplane? Crop dusting or?
No. The plane had been a duster for years, part of its life. That's what almost all of the older biplanes, their second life, which kept them alive for multiple decades, they became crop dusters. And the lucky ones got to be crop dusters and didn't get wrecked and got to come back to the standard category decades later. And that's how this plane got to survive, to be one of the ones that still exists, is because as a rides plane, I still travel with the plane all over the country. I've flown it from coast to coast multiple times, and that's part of what I know this plane is still alive for, is to be a rides plane, to give people the experience. And that's why I go barnstorming in it. There's not many people that keep old planes like this alive as a they might keep them as a rides plane, but they have a fixed base where they are at, and that's it. It's a business to them, and that's might have multiple pilots flying it, and it's always a plan to be booking it. But my whole thing is to enjoy the plane and to get people all over the place to get the experience. And the best thing is someone that doesn't expect that they're ever going to get a flight in a plane like this, and you show up to their small town and they see it and they're amazed they get to go for the flight. And that happens multiple times because I do go zigzagging around the country, and just someone seeing the plane parked next to the road at a gas station in Mount Air, Iowa, or right on the main street in Pacific City, Oregon. You have people that have never been in an airplane in their life, or you have someone that is 101 and hasn't been in an airplane since 1960 something, and the last time he was in a plane, it was a TravelAir biplane. So it's like, yeah, there's cool things like that.
I think that's absolutely fantastic that you're not just sticking to a fixed base. You're actually bringing this across America like an old like a barnstormer would.
Yeah, that's what the plane is for. So I know that was its first life. Basically, its first life was to teach people how to fly. And if you didn't have a job flying two businessmen from town to town or delivering the airmail, you wanted to fly the plane, you found a way. You went barnstorming from small town, land in a farmer's field, get everybody in town to give you $1 or whatever they could to get the experience, and then you move on to the next town.
Maybe a kiss from a pretty girl.
Yeah, and you can do that still. And since that was its first life, it got, to survive all these years. It's 95 years old right now, and it's still doing what it was designed to do. So.
Well, I was going to ask you what gives you the most joy in flying, but I think you've pretty much described it. It's the plane, the flight, the sharing, the inspiring people, and really keeping this tradition alive. And I mean, you're more of a caretaker than an owner of this old girl. I hope that she lives on past us here and can continue on in this role.
Yep, somebody else, just like Rod Magner, who I got the plane from, it was time for him medically to hand the plane over, and he called me. It was like, wow. So it was a lot of things in place that just happened that I get to be the person to keep it flying now. So
well, I certainly hope that you get to continue to fly this for quite some time, and that, like Rob, you're able to pass on this.
Yeah, that's definitely what's going to happen, because it needs to do exactly what has been happening, and what I get to do with the plane, and what Rod got to do with the plane, and other caretakers of the plane have done. So the first person who this plane was registered to was Doug Davis. He was an air race pilot back in the 30s. He was the pilot who flew the TravelAir mystery ship. So, and he taught multiple people how to fly. He was an Army Air Corps instructor, and so it's important. I mean, not that I'm, someone important like Doug Davis, but I'm still important enough to keep the plane alive. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Keith, it was really good talking to you today. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with the Squawk 77 listeners. I guess that's a wrap for this episode, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to you guys on the next episode of Squawk 77.
Thanks for sticking around with us all the way to the end. So, what did we learn today? Well, Keith showed us that following your dream of flying can be closer than you think, especially here in the States, where we have more small airports per square mile than any other country in the world. If you have a passion, there's a way to get in the air. Oh, and don't take high density altitude lightly. It's no joke. Wait a minute, was that a pun? No, but seriously, density altitude is essentially the altitude at which your plane thinks it's flying, and it affects your plane's performance, especially during takeoff and landing. As density altitude increases, you need more runway. The number is based on a combination of things such as pressure, temperature, and to some extent humidity. Believe it or not, humid air is actually lighter than normal air. Please spread the word about Squawk 77
And if you enjoyed this episode, why don't you give us a like? It keeps the algorithm happy. And you know how grumpy that algorithm gets when it's not fed. Nearly bit my head off last week. You can follow us on Instagram at Squawk77pod and on YouTube at youtube.com/@Squawk77podcast. And if you or someone you know has a Squawk 77 moment, or just a close call or some sort of emergency, we'd love to hear your story. Reach out to us at squawk77pod@gmail. And remember, aviate, navigate, and communicate. See you on the tarmac.